Ladies and gentlemen, what can I say about Arc Raiders that hasn't already been said? This game is incredibly hyped. It's possibly one of the most hyped games I've seen in my YouTube career. And, well, I've been trying to figure out why. I recently got to sample the title via their 3-day server slam, and it took me a day or two to really get a grasp of it and find out whether I liked it or not. And long story short, I do enjoy it enough to want to purchase it at release. Now, do I think it's worth all the hype that it's getting? I think that really depends on who you are and what you're interested in. If you're a die-hard extraction shooter fan, then the answer might be yes, because this game, in comparison to its competition, is very polished, especially for a game that's not even out yet. It'll be out on the 30th of October 2025, depending on when you're watching this video. But for me to see a game that runs this well, that's as optimized, that has fairly solid core gameplay, gunplay, visuals, immersive sound design, it's got a lot going for it. It feels like the old definition of a AAA title. You can tell that Embark Studios is made up of industry veterans from DICE and potentially other studios. The sound design alone was enough to convince me of that. It sounded very familiar. It sounded similar to a Battlefield or a Star Wars Battlefront game. And the reason for that is because apparently they brought over the lead sound designer from DICE. He's with Embark now and working his magic alongside potentially the rest of his sound team to bring us some fantastic audio. Just listen to this night raid. The ambience by itself is incredible. It's very immersive. You feel like you're in this forest or swampland. When you hear the gunfire crack in the distance or drones flying by, you feel like you're there. And that to me is very important. You know, George Lucas once said that sound is half of the experience when it comes to cinema. And, well, I agree. As an audiophile, as a voice actor, a sound editor, I agree 100%. And when it comes to a video game, especially a competitive game, that audio is crucial to your success. Can you hear where that enemy is? Are you listening for those footsteps? Are they above, below, to the side, or behind you? Where's that gunfire coming from? I can tell you that most of my frustrations within Escape from Tarkov came from the fact that the positional audio at the time that I played it was quite terrible. Now, it might be a lot better today. I haven't played that game in a very long time, but that was probably my number one frustration. Taking some time out to discuss the footage that you're looking at, this was during a night raid and while I was live streaming on Twitch. So I was spending most of my time just kind of exploring and looking around, somewhat treating this like a DayZ session during a solo queue. And I'll talk a little bit more about the solo queue later, but right now, you might begin to hear some footsteps. And so I hear somebody off to the west-southwest, now starting to breach, looking for loot. Let's let this play out. Two shots with this Anvil pistol, which is a heavier caliber pistol that I think fires heavy ammo. And I'm pretty sure we gave that guy a heart attack. Now, if there's one thing that engagement illustrated, it's that third-person perspective peeking is, of course, going to be a thing. And I'll say to you that if third person is a deal breaker, if that type of combat bothers you, then you might want to pass on Arc Raiders, because as far as I'm aware, based on the research that I've conducted, they are not looking to bring a first-person mode to the game anytime soon, if ever. And of course, as a first-person shooter player for many years, I agree that first-person is better for competitive gameplay, especially a game where you can lose everything. However, with that said, I didn't find it to be enough of an issue to dissuade me from purchasing the game, and it's something that I was able to adapt to. Taking fire as I'm trying to mind my own business. This is the problem with attempting to loot one of those probes out in the open. They carry higher value loot, and so they're a hot commodity. But unfortunately, they're really loud, especially when you're attempting to breach them. I started taking fire, immediately heading for the hills and hiding behind some cover to try to figure out where this guy is. And I think he's behind the bus. Turns out he's not our only problem. We're joined by a second player. I fire off a couple of Stitcher shots towards the guy behind the bus, and I'm back to cover, recharging my shield. Now, if there is a downside to great sound design and positional audio, it's the fact that you can usually tell where gunshots are coming from, and more often than not, if I've died, it's been to a third party, in solo queue especially, where people are just waiting to hear gunshots or see flares go up into the air, indicating that a player has been eliminated. But with that said, I continue to fall back, utilizing more of this high ground cover. The two players appear to be engaging each other. I decided to wait it out, let one eliminate the other, and I'm holding this angle thinking, okay, maybe he's just gonna come out to try to knock this guy out.
Can I give you a kiss?
You can hear him talking to the other player. I think he's looking to do some smooching. But the problem here is I'm holding this angle, forgetting about the fact that this guy has the same camera perspective I do. And I'm exposed, he's peeking, using his camera, and takes the shot. So, once again, I recharge my shield, fall back. I'm thinking, let him come to me. I've got the high ground. Let's pull an Obi-Wan and see if we can get him to slip up. Using some bandages to heal myself now. So, again, if this type of gameplay bugs you, if you're not a fan of this third-person camera perspective, guess what? It happens all the time. So, I wouldn't hold your breath for a first-person mode, now or ever, potentially, and adapt and overcome. On the bright side, the solo queue appeared to be just that, an actual solo queue, and I, during the server slam, didn't run into any pre-made groups. I don't know if that's going to be the case during release. There's some information out there stating that it's a priority solo queue. It will try to matchmake you with other solos, but there is a chance that you may run into pre-mades if there's not enough people playing or queued up. However, I've also heard that the solo queue is 100% a dedicated solo queue, and you won't see pre-mades at all. I don't know if that's true. Shot fired from a good flank here. However, at this point, looking back at the footage, I'm wondering, should I have charged him with my submachine gun? His shields were down. He'd have to repair them. Maybe that would have been a good opportunity there. I don't know, though. I still had a bit of a run to get to that bus if I wanted to do that. I decide to hold my ground. However, he's ready for that peek. So I think this game definitely favors aggression. You want to drop their shields and charge them as quickly as possible so that you can eliminate them before they recharge their shields. But I was just so in love with this position that I figured I'd hold it and try to wait for him to make some mistakes. However, he was always ready for my peaks, and I kept exposing myself incorrectly to that third-person camera, and it just took some time to really adapt to that gameplay. But he's making a push. We stay hull down here. We use some World of Tanks tactics to let him have it. He exposed more of his body than I did, and we were able to get the elimination. So in that case, patience was a virtue, It did allow me to get that elimination. However, I used up all of my resources and only have maybe a bandage left. I've got no more shield recharge. And unfortunately, it's time to get third party. I connect a return shot. However, I'm too weak. He finishes me off. You gotta shoot, loot, and scoot. As I fall down this hill, you can hear a drone flying in to potentially provide some karma, but I don't last long enough. I bleed out, and I'm not sure what happens to that enemy. This next matchup provides an example of some indoor gameplay, and this is all part of the same map. There was only one map available during the server slam, and it's enormous. There is a lot to do and see. Contact front. I hesitate. Almost buying the farm there to a bad roll. I should have moved around a little bit more with that Stitcher. I fall back, closing the doors behind me, and once again, recharging. Are you noticing a recurring theme here? Now, the reason I hesitated there was because I had been talking to my Twitch chat about when and when not to try to group up with a player in this game. And I found that players that had voice comms enabled were a little bit more likely to team up with you than not, whereas players that would never speak were always out to get you as soon as they saw you. And so I hesitated there thinking maybe this is one of those opportunities. And of course, it was not. So I once again decide to fall back, take the high ground, and here he comes. Once again, getting an elimination with that Pharaoh and Stitcher combo, which, from what I saw, was one of the early game metas. These are considered starting weapons. They're not really all that great in comparison to some of the stuff that you might find later on, which I didn't really get to experience, but from what I could tell, this was a solid 1-2 punch combo because you start out with that heavy-hitting Pharaoh, which in this game I would say is the equivalent to the Tarkov Mosin, and so it's not that hard to craft it. You can upgrade it, and it does a lot of damage to shields, if not eliminating your shields completely, and doing quite a bit to your health. So then you follow up with that Stitcher or some sort of full auto weapon, and you're good to go. So as I attempt to extract here, and in conclusion, I think I've let the game speak for itself. I didn't really showcase much, if any, PvE. It is pretty good. It's got some strong AI that was a little broken during the server slam. The ARC drones were able to see you through bushes and trees. That's apparently getting resolved for release. But I think the AI does need to be challenging. I think it's good that it is. It keeps people on their toes and it prevents too much camping. However, it should work properly and be balanced. For those of you that are upset about the fact that there is no PvE only mode, or the fact that the game swapped directions many years ago to become an extraction title, well, I get where you're coming from. You can't help but look and listen to this game, be immersed in its world, and want more. You're thinking, wow, I'd love some in-depth storytelling and character development. And look, there might still be room for story. I'm actually hoping that Embark can tell a story in a PvPvE title. That would be great because I love this retro futuristic vibe they've got going on. It does make me want to explore and experience a lot of the quests that we are provided. However, I'm also one of those people that embraces the PvP. I'm actually looking forward to it, especially considering the fact that it's been difficult for me to find an extraction game that caters a bit more to my playstyle. You know, I'm getting older, the reflexes aren't necessarily there anymore. Something like Tarkov or one of its competitors is challenging for me to get into sometimes, especially considering that I don't always have that amount of time to devote to a game. But with this, I feel like I can jump in and not have as much anxiety, and it's just a cool, fun-looking game. To an extent, maybe I simply don't take it as seriously as I would some of those other titles. Embark has nailed the hybrid formula. It's simplistic in some areas, maybe overhyped in some cases, but in comparison to its competition, it looks great, sounds fantastic, it's optimized, it's smooth, fluidic, the core gameplay is solid, and for those reasons, I'm looking forward to it. So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. Stay tuned for more, and I'll see you on the next one.